Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. After being reborn, I deliberately delayed and postponed getting the marriage certificate with Ethan Carter. In my past life, after Ethan found out I was pregnant, he disappeared with Sophia White. 20 years later, when I was on the verge of death, he returned. Looking at a photo of Sophia, he said to me, "If I had waited just a little longer before marrying you, would things have ended differently?" When I realized I had been reborn, Ethan was standing at the dormitory entrance waiting for me so we could go register our marriage. I lied, saying I needed to deliver something to a colleague, and sent him ahead to the marriage registration office. Once I separated from Ethan, I went up the mountain and lay down on the rocking chair at Mrs. Wilson's house, looking at the sea of clouds in front of her home and basking in the sunlight. She handed me a roasted sweet potato and curiously asked, "Aren't you supposed to be getting your marriage certificate with Ethan today? What are you doing here?" I took a bite of the warm sweet potato, smiled and said, "Auntie, I had a nightmare. When I woke up, I felt uneasy." She comforted me. "That was just a dream. What matters is the life ahead of you. Once you marry Ethan, you'll have a good life waiting for you. Why be afraid of a nightmare?" For a moment I was stunned. Then I smiled and nodded. "Auntie is right. I'll just stay here for a little while longer, then I'll go. But marrying Ethan in this lifetime? That will never happen." In my past life, right after Ethan and I got our marriage certificate and stepped out of the registration hall, he ran into a young woman, Sophia White. She lived in the village where we worked. On our way back, Ethan remained silent the whole time. I thought he was just being mindful of his new role as a husband, keeping a distance from female colleagues. I had no idea that when I was close to death, I would finally learn the truth. That at that very moment, Ethan had fallen for Sophia at first sight. He wasn't avoiding her out of propriety. He was regretting it, regretting that he hadn't waited just one more day before marrying me. After that day, Ethan became much colder toward me. He would often sit alone, staring in the direction of the village, lost in thought. When I asked him why, he always avoided answering. After asking too many times, I eventually stopped. We were both busy with work, and I thought that once he figured things out, he would talk to me on his own. When the village project ended, Ethan and I were assigned to different teams, forcing us to live apart. I believed it was temporary, but with every new assignment, he was always sent far away from me. I once brought it up to him, but he only replied indifferently, "I follow the organization's arrangements." Then one day, I returned to the city for work and overheard my colleagues talking. That was when I learned that except for the first separation, every transfer afterward had been Ethan's request. I confronted him and we had a huge fight. Afterward, he held me and apologized, but he never. Explained why the next morning Ethan left. That was when I knew our marriage had come to an end. Life is always full of unexpected twists. I found out I was pregnant. The moment he learned about the pregnancy, Ethan's attitude completely changed. He became attentive, taking care of me in every way possible. He clumsily learned how to cook for me. He would press his ear against my belly, listening for the baby's movements. Every evening, he would accompany me on walks. Then suddenly one day, Ethan disappeared. I asked around, I searched for him for a long time. No one knew where he had gone. No one could tell me if he was dead or alive. So I started going to prenatal checkups alone, gave birth alone, took the baby to the hospital alone, raised the child alone, and arranged the funerals of both our parents alone. I thought he was dead, but just as I was on my deathbed, he appeared before me again. That was when I finally learned that for the past 20 years, he had been with Sophia. They had adopted a son, and they poured all their love into him. But Sophia, weighed down by resentment, couldn't let go. Before she died, her only regret was never being able to marry him. Ethan said he felt guilty toward me, but also he resented me. I found it ridiculous. If he didn't love me, why didn't he just tell me sooner? He could have divorced me. He could have given Sophia a home. But instead he abandoned his wife and child, ignored his parents. What right did he have to resent me and the child I had raised on my own? He told me he envied Ryan Carter, the son Ethan and Sophia had raised with love. He blamed me. He said I brought him into this world without his consent. It was only at that moment that I realized, without my knowledge, Ethan had already reconnected with his father. He had kept it from me all this time. I stayed at Mrs. Wilson's house for an hour. After saying goodbye to her, I headed straight to the marriage registration office. When I arrived, I saw Ethan helping Sophia up from the ground. He was staring at her, unwilling to look away. His face, which had been tense with frustration just moments ago, now held an expression of amazement. In my past life, I had been too busy helping Sophia up and chatting with her to notice Ethan's reaction. But now, seeing it from an outsider's perspective, everything was so obvious. "Ethan, I'm here. You must have been waiting anxiously." The moment he saw me, his entire body stiffened. Panic flickered across his face before he quickly tried to regain his composure. "Oh, you're here," he said slowly, fumbling over his words. I noticed that when Sophia looked at me this time, her expression was different from my past life. There was something complex in her eyes, a flicker of resentment. But when I looked again, she had already returned to normal, as if it had all been my imagination. I was curious. This time, before we even got our marriage certificate, Ethan had already met Sophia. What would he choose? Would he break up with me and choose her? Or would he do exactly what he did in my past life, marry me while still running off with her? "It's getting late. Let's go inside and get the certificate." I deliberately acted impatient. Ethan's face turned pale before he could respond. Sophia suddenly cried out, "Ah, my foot hurts." Her voice shattered the tense silence. In my past life, Sophia hadn't been injured, but now somehow she was, and the timing was so convenient. Could she have also been reborn? I scrutinized her closely, searching for any signs, but there was nothing unusual. Ethan took her to the clinic. The doctor examined her and said it was just a minor wound. If she had come any later, it would have already started healing on its own. Sophia's cheeks blushed red while Ethan looked visibly relieved. On the way back, we passed by the marriage registration office. Ethan hesitated and said, "Looks like they're closing soon. Maybe we should come back tomorrow." I smiled slightly. "Sure, we'll see." A marriage certificate requires a good day to be chosen, but there would never be a suitable day for me to marry Ethan in this lifetime. Ethan sighed. "All right, I'll let Mrs. Wilson know when we get back." Ethan and I had come by bicycle. On the way home, Sophia unhesitatingly hopped onto the back of Ethan's bike. Ethan looked at me awkwardly, but he didn't refuse her. I pretended not to see anything and pedaled away on my own. The cool evening breeze carried their voices to me. I couldn't hear their exact words, but I could tell they were happy. Ethan's voice had a controlled joy to it, the kind he tried to suppress but couldn't entirely hide. It had been a long time since I'd seen Ethan smile. In my past life, after he met Sophia, he had never smiled at me again. But now none of that mattered anymore. As I entered the village, the locals noticed Sophia clinging to Ethan's waist as she sat on his bike. Some villagers looked at me and knowingly winked, while others coughed awkwardly and shook their heads. I knew what they meant, but I still smiled and returned to my dormitory. Ethan had already rented a house in preparation for our marriage. Most of our things had been moved there. As I passed by, I stopped. The house had 2 bedrooms on either side, a main hall in the middle, and a small courtyard. In my past life, after coming back from the marriage registration office, I had seen the bright red wedding decorations hanging in our home and felt nothing but happiness. No one knew that just one day before our wedding, the groom had been excitedly decorating our house only to leave it in darkness on our wedding night. That night, like so many nights after, we had lain silently in bed, doing nothing, unable to fall asleep. I didn't wait for Ethan to return. Pushing my bicycle, I went back to the dormitory. Once inside, I pulled out my transfer letter from the drawer. A transfer, but in reality, I was being promoted and given a raise. In my past life, I had turned down this opportunity because I was about to marry Ethan. I had given up that opportunity. 3 months later, we were assigned to different locations. After that, Ethan intentionally kept his distance from me, moving further and further away. Later, I got pregnant, then Ethan disappeared. I had to raise our child alone while also taking care of both our parents. At work, I struggled to keep up, and eventually, I was reassigned from a key department to a marginal one. I never got a promotion or a raise for the rest of my life. When my son started elementary school, he would always look at me with disdain whenever he saw how exhausted and ordinary I had become. "Other moms look so pretty. Why can't you dress up like other people?" The more I recalled, the more unsettled I became. Even back then, my son had already been in contact with his missing father, and he had kept it from me his entire life. How ridiculous, how utterly ridiculous. That evening, Ethan didn't come looking for me like he usually did. I took my meal box and went to the cafeteria by myself. Inside, I saw Ethan sitting across from Sophia. They were picking food for each other, their movements intimate. I didn't know what Ethan had just said, but Sophia covered her mouth and laughed. When Ethan noticed me, he froze for a moment before quickly standing up in a flustered manner. "Oh, you're here. Sophia just got back home and she had nothing to eat, so I brought her here for a meal. First, I was planning to bring you a portion later, but I didn't expect you to come this early." The cafeteria was almost empty. Most of the food was already gone. I suddenly remembered in my past life, after we got our marriage certificate, Ethan had gone to the cafeteria to get food, but I had waited for him for a long time. When he finally returned, his hands were empty. "The food ran out," he had said indifferently. "Just bear with it for the night." That night, the only sound in our house was my stomach growling from hunger. So even back then, Ethan had already started taking care of Sophia. I said nothing and walked past him, scooping up whatever food was left and packing it to take back to my dorm. I had just started eating when there was a knock at the door. It was Ethan and Sophia. Ethan looked at me with a complicated expression. After hesitating for a moment, he finally said, "Maddie, I want to discuss something with you." I didn't respond. He glanced at Sophia, who stood beside him nervously. His eyes were full of tenderness. Then his voice took on a more determined tone. "Maddie, Sophia just got back from the city. You know she's all alone and her house hasn't been lived in for a long time. It needs cleaning. Since we haven't officially gotten our marriage certificate yet, I was thinking maybe we could let Sophia stay in our house for a few days." I looked at Sophia. She shrank behind Ethan like a frightened rabbit. Past and present lives overlapped in my mind. If I hadn't already seen the truth, I might have believed she was just a pitiful, helpless woman. But now there was no doubt in my mind she had been reborn too. I had no time to play her game. Longer wanted this man no matter how much Sophia schemed. Everything she did was meaningless to me. "Sure," I said lightly, "it's your house, you decide." Ethan clearly hadn't expected me to agree so easily. His prepared explanation suddenly got stuck in his throat. But I continued, "I don't like other people touching my things. I'll go pack up my stuff later." Ethan was momentarily stunned before quickly waving his hand. "No need, no need. I'll help move your things to another room." So that was it. He wasn't just letting Sophia stay in our house. He was letting her sleep in our bed. How laughable. I caught Sophia smiling slightly, the corners of her lips curling up. After dinner, I took a flashlight and headed to the house to pack my things. When I arrived, Ethan was in the middle of making the bed for Sophia. He was using the bed sheets I had carefully chosen for our wedding night. Seeing me, he looked momentarily surprised. "Maddie, why are you here?" Ethan asked, looking surprised. "I already moved all your things to my room," he added. I gave a non-committal hum and turned to the next room to retrieve my belongings. Ethan followed me, his expression complicated. There was something in his eyes I couldn't quite decipher. Just then, Sophia ran out of the room, her voice soft and hesitant. "Ethan, isn't this bedsheet meant for your wedding with Maddie? Is it really okay for me to sleep on it? I mean, I don't mind even if I have to sleep on dirty clothes, it's fine." Her voice grew quieter with each word. I saw the guilty look flash across Ethan's face as he turned to me. "Maddie, all the bed sheets in the house are brand new. This one." I didn't miss the brief moment of triumph in Sophia's eyes, but she still had no idea. Ethan, this worthless man, had ceased to be of any value to me the moment I was reborn. I shrugged indifferently. "You bought it with your money, you decide." "Thank you, Maddie," Sophia beamed. "Ethan, you two are so kind to me. I never thought there would be a day when I could live in your house, in your wedding room, and sleep in your wedding bed." Her words sounded deliberately off. Even Ethan seemed to realize it. He glanced at me as if testing my reaction, waiting to see if I would lash out. Sophia too seemed to notice her slip-up and immediately covered her mouth, feigning panic. "Oh, I'm so sorry, Maddie. I didn't mean it that way. Please don't misunderstand. Ethan and I, there's nothing between us. I should just sleep on dirty clothes instead." She reached for her bundle of clothes, putting on a show of self-sacrifice. Ethan quickly stopped her. "Sophia, it's fine. Just sleep comfortably, it's no big deal." Ethan watched me closely as if trying to read my reaction, but I was too busy packing to care. Sophia's act of guilt and regret was nothing more than a desperate attempt to provoke me, to make herself seem weak and pitiable in front of Ethan while painting me as the cold, unfeeling one. She wanted him to resent me, but I had lived through one lifetime already. Why would I care about their little games? I found it amusing that in my past life, she hadn't dared to act this brazenly in front of me, but in this life she wasn't even trying to hide it. I walked over to her, leaned in and whispered near her ear, "Sophia, you're overthinking. Why would I care? Ethan is only looking out for you. It's completely understandable. Even if he wanted to marry you, I wouldn't mind. The only question is, would he actually marry you?" I smiled at her and playfully winked. Her face darkened instantly. She couldn't figure it out. Why wasn't I acting like the naive, gullible stepmother from her past life? But just as quickly as her expression fell, she seemed to realize something. Her smugness returned as she glanced at me triumphantly. I ignored her. After packing my things, I hoisted the bundle onto my back and prepared to leave. Ethan suddenly called out to me. He took a step forward, reaching to take my bag from me, but I pulled away. What a joke. Sophia had been reborn too. In our past life, she had been Ethan's hidden mistress, but in this life, she was here to claim her place as his rightful wife. She already saw Ethan as her personal property, and I had no interest in getting caught up in their mess. Ethan noticed my subtle movement to avoid him. His face showed a flicker of hurt. "Maddie, are you mad? I can explain." How ironic. In my past life, he had wasted 21 years of my life without saying a word, but now in this life, he suddenly wanted to explain, as if I didn't already know what he was going to say, some excuse about how he was just being considerate, just helping Sophia because she had no one else, justifying his emotional betrayal under the guise of kindness. There was no need for explanations. Besides, Sophia would never allow it. Sure enough, before Ethan could say anything else, Sophia let out a sharp cry from inside the room. Ethan immediately forgot about me, spinning on his heel and rushing back to her side. I let out a quiet chuckle, adjusted the bag on my back and walked away. In my past life, I had been married to Ethan for 21 years, and I had died at the age of 45. Dying at 45 was considered an early death. When I gave birth to that ungrateful child, I suffered a difficult labor and severe hemorrhaging. That was when my health began to deteriorate. Later, before I had fully recovered, I had to care for my son alone, take care of Ethan Carter's unreasonable parents, juggle work, and search for Ethan after he disappeared. My health only worsened day by day. Raising my son to the age of 20 had already taken every last ounce of effort I had. Ever since Ethan went missing, I hadn't had a single restful night's sleep. But now, in this life, I didn't marry Ethan. I didn't overwork myself to exhaustion. My health was intact. For the first time in 2 lifetimes, I slept soundly through the night, free of dreams. The next day, I requested leave from my supervisor and informed them of my decision to accept the transfer back to the city. My supervisor was surprised. "Didn't you say you didn't want to be separate?" After getting married, I shook my head. "I won't be marrying him. My career is the most important thing to me now." My supervisor smiled approvingly. In my past life, he had also tried to persuade me, saying that with my abilities I could have a much brighter future. But I had been blinded, foolishly giving up a great opportunity for a worthless man. I asked him to keep my departure a secret and coordinated the timing of my transfer. After leaving the office, I headed straight to the train station. During this time, train tickets were hard to come by, and the lines were long. As I rode past the house Ethan and I were supposed to share, I saw him and Sophia White crouched in the courtyard brushing their teeth. Through the fence, I watched as Ethan casually took a towel from the clothesline and gently wiped Sophia's hands. Sophia gazed at him with adoration, her eyes full of affection. It seemed that after just one night, their relationship had deepened significantly. When Ethan noticed me passing by on my bike, his face went pale and he quickly put some distance between himself and Sophia. I withdrew my gaze entirely uninterested. One of them looked guilty, the other hurt. Neither had anything to do with me anymore. Following my memories, I arrived at the train station. After paying to store my bicycle, I entered the ticket hall along with the crowd. At this time, people traveling long distances carried large bundles. Everything from sewing needles to blankets and baskets. Anything they could take, they brought with them on the train. Seeing the chaos around me, I decided to bring as little as possible. The bulky items I'd sell or give away. I stood in line for a long time. When choosing between a standing ticket and a sleeper ticket, I opted for the sleeper. I had suffered enough in my past life. In this one, I wanted to be good to myself. By the time I left the station, it was already afternoon. After a lifetime away from this moment, I had forgotten basic travel preparations like bringing food. In the rush to get my ticket, I had skipped lunch and now my stomach was empty. I asked around and found the state-owned restaurant where, in my past life, Ethan and I had gone on our arranged date. At that time, we had been introduced by colleagues. Ethan was good-looking with fair skin, exactly the clean, well-groomed type I liked. He was also in a technical profession just like me, and both of us were in the same city. It seemed convenient. He had also been satisfied with my appearance, so we decided to give it a try. During our relationship, he wasn't exceptionally good to me, but he wasn't bad either. He took care of me in daily life, and when I encountered difficulties at work, he helped me solve them. There was no overwhelming passion between us, just compatibility. I had thought we would live a peaceful life together. I never expected him to drop a bombshell on me. 2 months into our relationship, Ethan proposed. At that moment, he genuinely seemed happy about choosing to marry me. But in the end, childhood affection couldn't compete with a fated encounter. When Sophia appeared, she stirred something in him, something I never had. He drifted away. His feelings, once stable, became uncertain. Love, so sudden and unexplainable, consumed him entirely. But if he had truly loved her, he should never have been so selfish. He never should have abandoned everything and wasted my entire life. After parking my bike, I walked into the restaurant. There weren't many people at this hour, so I spotted them immediately. Ethan and Sophia sitting in a corner. Sophia was the first to notice me. Ethan Carter immediately stood up and waved at me enthusiastically. "Maddie, are you here to eat? What a coincidence. Ethan and I are having a meal together. Why don't you join us? Don't be shy. It's just a matter of grabbing an extra pair of chopsticks." What a masterclass in manipulation. This woman had stolen someone's husband for over 20 years, and now with just a few words, she had placed herself in the position of the rightful hostess. "Oh, I wouldn't want to intrude on your date," I said with a bright smile, deliberately glancing at Ethan. He visibly panicked, quickly standing up to pull out a chair for me. "Maddie, don't misunderstand. Sophia and it's not what you think," he stammered. "She's just too thin, and I wanted to make sure she eats well." So feeding her was his new way of showing off. Ignoring Ethan, I walked over and sat directly beside Sophia. Ethan hesitated for a moment, awkwardly touching his nose before sitting back down. Looking at the table full of lavish dishes, I was momentarily taken aback. Goodness, this meal must have cost Ethan at least half a month's salary. He was certainly generous when it came to Sophia. She picked up a piece of braised pork and placed it in my bowl, smiling sweetly. "Maddie, try the braised pork," Ethan said. "This restaurant makes the best one, so he insisted on ordering it for me. He even said he'd pack some for me to take home." She giggled. "Oh, and try the fish too. It's the best fish I've ever had. Ethan says he knows how to cook it as well. He promised to make it for me when we get home." Ethan cooking? That was new. In my past life, when I was pregnant, he had been an absolute disaster in the kitchen, either dropping pots or breaking plates. In the end, I had to push him out and cook for myself. So love really could be an act, huh? I took a bite of the braised pork, savoring it slowly. It was delicious. Back in those days, food was made with real ingredients, fresh pork rich in flavor, and the fish had none of the later chemical aftertastes. It was genuinely good. I continued eating, completely ignoring whatever nonsense Sophia was saying. Suddenly, she let out a sharp scream, making me nearly drop my chopsticks. "Oh, I'm so sorry, Maddie. I just got startled by a fishbone." She took a deep breath and then continued as if nothing had happened. "Where was I? Oh, right. Maddie, have you ever tried Ethan's cooking? If not, you should come over tonight. He promised to cook. Isn't that right, Ethan?" Sophia's act was becoming tiresome. She had noticed that I wasn't reacting to her provocations, so she had to force a reaction, like pretending to be scared of a fishbone just to make me acknowledge her. Go on, keep flaunting. Let's see who you'll show off to once I leave. I smiled at her. Sophia, you're so lucky, I said sweetly. I've known Ethan for so long, but I never knew he could cook. And yet, you two have only just reconnected, and he's already promising to make meals for you. Looks like I'll get to enjoy the benefits too, since I'll be coming over for dinner. Sophia had clearly expected me to explode with jealousy. Instead, I didn't care at all. She froze, her face twisting in confusion while Ethan's expression shifted between embarrassment and discomfort. I continued eating, entirely unbothered. When my order of tofu and scallions arrived, I slid it toward them. Here, you two should try this, I said. The table fell into an awkward silence after that. Finally, I could enjoy my meal in peace. After leaving the restaurant, I casually bid Sophia and Ethan goodbye before riding off on my bicycle. I needed to stop by the post office to call my parents. In my past life, after Ethan disappeared, I had raised our child alone while also taking care of his parents. Every day I was like a spinning top, working, parenting, and running in circles with no rest. I never understood why Ethan's parents had never accepted me. My family was just as respectable as theirs, yet they constantly looked down on me. Not only did they refuse to help me raise my child, but they also made my life even harder. If I did even one thing wrong, they would storm into my workplace and cause a scene. Back then, having a stable job was a privilege. I had a son to raise, so I endured it all. Meanwhile, my own parents, despite being far away, did their best to support me while taking care of my siblings' children. They still tried to find me a new match, hoping I could remarry and start over. But when Ethan's parents found out, they stormed into my parents' home and caused a huge commotion. As soon as my parents learned about my situation, they accused me of trying to drive Ethan's parents to their deaths. Not only that, but every time I was introduced to a potential suitor, Ethan's parents would bring my son along to the meeting. Then on cue, my son would run up to me crying and throwing a tantrum. Over time, no man wanted to be involved with me anymore. Eventually, I gave up on the idea of remarrying and devoted myself entirely to raising my son. Because of Ethan's parents, my own parents suffered countless injustices, but more than anything, they worried about me. Even on their deathbeds, their greatest concern was still me. The call connected quickly. After a whole lifetime apart, hearing my parents' voices again brought tears to my eyes. Hearing the emotion in my voice, my parents immediately became worried. They assumed Ethan had mistreated me and were ready to come find him to settle the score. I quickly reassured them and told them everything that had happened, as well as my decision. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Finally, they spoke. As long as this is a decision you've made after careful thought, we will respect it. Only then did I feel truly relieved. I told them about my transfer back to the city and that my train would leave in 3 days. My parents immediately said they would prepare all my favorite dishes and wait for me at home. When I returned to my dormitory and opened the door, I was startled to find Ethan sitting at my desk, flipping through my study materials. I had almost forgotten he still had a key to my dorm. Seeing that the drawer containing my transfer documents was securely locked, I let out a quiet sigh of relief. With things between us now unclear, the last thing I wanted was for something to go wrong before I left. The moment Ethan saw me enter, he quickly stood up and poured me a glass of water. He clearly had something to say but hesitated for a long time. I sat on my bed, slowly sipping my tea, waiting. Finally, he couldn't hold back any longer. He turned to face me and said, "Maddie, it's not what you think between me and Sophia." I swallowed my tea and replied calmly, "And what do I think?" Ethan faltered. If I were still the naive woman from my past life, I would have believed him, whether he explained or not. But I had already lived through one lifetime. I had seen and experienced my own tragic fate. No matter how many times he tried to explain, his words meant nothing to me. In my previous life, just before I died, he had stood by my hospital bed and admitted that he had fallen in love with Sophia at first sight, that their love was true, something beyond comparison to what we had. In his eyes, I had been the third party in their relationship, a flaw in an otherwise perfect love story. Maddie, believe it or not, I only wanted to take care of Sophia because she has no family left. She's all alone in this world, and it's not easy for a woman in her situation. Ethan's voice was laced with guilt, but he couldn't even look me in the eye as he spoke. If even he didn't believe his own words, why should I? Still, I smiled and said, "All right, I believe you. Now can you leave? I've had a long day and want to rest. Oh, and before you go, leave the key to my dorm." Ethan froze, his face stiffened. He had clearly realized that I didn't believe him. After Ethan left, I wiped down the chair he had been sitting on. It was genuinely dirty. Then I started packing my things. I hadn't accumulated much in the 6 months I had worked here. Just some clothes, bedding, and daily essentials. The real problem was the wedding items Ethan and I had bought together. I needed to find time to settle that with him before I left. Just then there was a knock on the door. It was Ethan again. He was holding a box of pastries, smiling as he handed it to me. "Maddie, open it." I took the box and lifted the lid. Inside were money and ration tickets. Ethan grinned. "I made up my mind this morning. After we get married, all my money will be managed by you. You can give me a set amount each month for living expenses." I stared at him, suddenly feeling like I didn't recognize this man at all from my past life. Not only had he never given me a cent, but after we registered our marriage, I had never even seen a single coin from him. When I nearly died giving birth, his parents refused to spend a dime on me. They even said it would be better if I just died, that keeping me alive was a waste of money. It was my parents and my older brother's family who had paid for the doctors to save my life. Afterward, all the medical expenses for Ethan's parents had come out of my own pocket. During the 20 years he was missing, he had secretly kept in touch with our son. And now I had to wonder, had he also stayed in contact with his parents all those years? I had no idea whether Ethan Carter had ever sent money to his parents, but I did know one thing. Before my parents passed away, they called my son into their room. When he came out, he tried to look sad, but I still caught the glint of satisfaction in his eyes. After the funeral, I searched his room but found nothing of value. Later, when I fell ill and had no money for treatment, I could only drag my suffering along, and it dragged on and on until I was on my deathbed. Thinking back now, it was entirely possible that Ethan knew I was sick and needed money. It was also possible that my son had hidden the money his grandparents had left for him, yet neither of them was willing to spend a single cent on me. The thought left a dull ache in my chest. Ethan must have noticed my sudden trembling because he immediately reached out to steady me. I shoved him away, leaning against the wall. I took deep breaths, trying to suppress the pain in my chest. When I finally regained my composure and looked at Ethan again, all that remained in my eyes was cold indifference. Ethan visibly flinched. I glanced at the money inside the metal box since he had brought it over. I wasn't going to let myself suffer a loss. The debts of my past life could never be fully settled, but in this life I intended to make things clear. I took out half of the money, the amount we had originally spent on our wedding preparations, then handed the rest along with the box back to Ethan. He looked at me in confusion but didn't say anything. Even the dullest person could sense the shift in my demeanor. He didn't understand what had changed in just a few minutes, but he clearly felt something slipping out of his control. After making sure I was all right, he left, hesitating with every step as he walked away. That night I barely slept. I dreamed of my past life, of Ethan's parents telling him about my difficult labor and severe bleeding. He had simply responded with the cold indifference. "I see." I dreamed of my son secretly meeting Ethan while I was desperately searching for him. Ethan had known I was looking for him all along, yet he had conspired with everyone. I found out I was to keep it a secret. No wonder everyone who knew him refused to talk about him when I asked. I also dreamed of my colleagues who had once worked alongside me for years. They all praised Ethan and Sophia White's beautiful love story. As for me, the legitimate wife in their eyes, I was nothing more than an unfortunate mistake, the result of fate's tangled red string when the matchmaker had drunkenly tied the wrong ends together. How utterly ridiculous! When I woke, my pillow was soaked with tears, but I was still alive, still healthy, and life still held possibilities, didn't it? For the next 2 days, I focused on wrapping up my work. I had also agreed to meet Sophia for a meal where Ethan would be cooking. Because of the money box incident, things had been quiet between us since that night. I thought that was the end of it, but then Sophia showed up again, inviting me over for dinner. She was so persistent and it would seem rude to refuse, so I accepted. That evening, I carried a small gift and headed to their place. As I approached, I saw them through the courtyard fence. Sophia was in Ethan's arms, his hands gripping the softest parts of her body. The moment they saw me, Ethan's face turned a shade of pale I had never seen before. Sophia too looked absolutely horrified as she scrambled to fix the buttons that had come undone. I didn't say a word. I simply turned and walked away. Whatever lavish dinner she had planned, I had already eaten. No need to leave a gift behind. I hadn't gotten far before Ethan caught up to me, grabbing my arm. He frantically tried to explain. "Maddie, wait. Let me explain." I turned to him, my voice calm and detached. "Explain what?" I asked. "The fact that you two were embracing half-dressed, or the part where your hands were exactly where they shouldn't be?" Over the past 2 days, despite being busy with work, I had heard plenty from Mrs. Wilson. She despised mistresses more than anything, especially the kind like Sophia, who not only played the other woman but had the audacity to flaunt it in front of the wife. She had eagerly kept me updated on Ethan and Sophia's shameless behavior. Some villagers had seen Sophia deliberately rubbing up against Ethan. Ethan hadn't dodged. Others had seen them sharing a meal from the same bowl, holding hands in secluded corners. Now standing before me, Ethan looked disheveled and desperate. I couldn't understand him. After doing all that, he still had the nerve to run after me and ask me not to misunderstand. Did he expect me to relive my past life where I took care of his parents while he spent his days tangled up with Sophia? I looked him in the eye, my voice cold and steady. "Before Sophia appeared, I was the only woman by your side. 1 hour after meeting her, you were already carrying her to the hospital. 3 hours after knowing her, you let her wrap her arms around your waist on your bike. 5 hours in, you left me behind to have a meal with her. 7 hours in, you let her move into our house. 1 day in, she was already SL, keeping in our wedding bed using the sheets I had prepared for our marriage. 1 day you spent half a month's salary treating her to a feast. 1 day you personally cooked for her. You didn't flinch when she touched you. You shared a meal from the same bowl. You held hands and now you embrace her." I let out a small laugh. "And yet you still want to explain. Can you still look me in the eye and swear that nothing happened between you two?" I asked coldly. "Do you really think I believe you?" With each word I spoke, Ethan Carter's body trembled harder. His lips moved as if he wanted to say something, but no words came out. "Let me guess," I continued. "Why are you so desperate to explain? Why do you insist on making me believe you, even to the point of throwing money at me? On the day we were supposed to register our marriage, you fell for Safia White at first sight, and she had feelings for you too. So she pretended to be injured to delay our registration at that time because you were already drawn to her. You didn't really want to marry me anymore. And now, after spending some time thinking it through, you've realized you love her. You want to be with her to share romantic moments together." I locked eyes with him and spoke slowly, deliberately. "But at the same time, you need a wife, a capable woman who can take care of your parents for you. And if this wife is also willing to handle their funeral arrangements in the future, even better. Am I right?" The moment I finished speaking, Ethan's head snapped up, his eyes filled with shock. Seeing his reaction, a bitter sadness welled up in me. I had wasted my entire past life on a man who only saw me as a convenient choice. The so-called sweetness I had experienced in our marriage was nothing but a joke. I could no longer deceive myself, and I would never let Ethan deceive me again. That night, I returned to my dorm to pack my things, but before I could finish, Sophia showed up. She glared at me, her expression full of resentment. "So you really came back, huh?" Seeing my calm demeanor, she let out a mocking laugh. Then, looking at me with nothing but scorn, she sneered. "In our last life, you held on to the title of Ethan's wife. So what? You spent your entire life slaving away for his parents. You raised a son all on your own, only for him to secretly call me mom behind your back." She let out a satisfied laugh. "Isn't it hilarious? Your husband was mine, your son was mine. And in this life, even though you were reborn, you can't change the fact that Ethan loves me. I will be his wife. I am the only one he will ever love." Even though I had long since been disappointed in my son from my past life, hearing that he had called Sophia mom behind my back still sent a dull pain through my chest. But I quickly composed myself. It didn't matter in this life whether he wanted it or not. I would never bring him into this world again. Sophia kept rambling, spewing words she thought would hurt me. But when she met my gaze, she hesitated because I wasn't angry. I wasn't even upset. There was only pity in my eyes. Pity, sympathy, and a faint sense of sorrow. That frightened her. She ran away in a panic because deep down she knew she and I were the same. Just a pair of pitiful fools. But this time, without me cleaning up their messes, could she and Ethan really live as happily as they had in our past life? In the middle of the night, I couldn't sleep. I stepped outside my door to look at the moon, only to be startled by a shadow sitting at the doorway. Under the dim glow from inside the room, I recognized Ethan. The heavy stench of alcohol surrounded him. Who knew how long he had been sitting there? Even after being reborn, I still couldn't understand him. Shaking my head, I grabbed a flashlight and went to find Sophia. When I told her to take Ethan home, she froze for a moment. Then, without a word, she followed me back to the dorm. Ethan had already passed out. Sophia struggled to lift him, but I didn't help. This was the man she loved. She should be the one to clean up after him. The next morning, I packed my luggage and prepared to leave. But before I could go, Mrs. Wilson came running up to me, dragging me along. "Come, you have to see this," she said excitedly. Curious, I followed her to the house that had once been meant for Ethan and me. The moment we arrived, I saw Ethan standing there, face twisted in fury. His gaze was locked on Sophia, who was sitting on the ground, disheveled and trembling. It didn't take long to piece together what had happened last night. After Sophia took Ethan home, she must have noticed his state. His lost expression, his drunken sleep in front of my dorm, the way he had murmured my name even in his dreams. It had driven her mad, so she had taken advantage of his drunken state. Even if he had mistaken her for me, she had still gone through with it. The villagers were already whispering about it when I arrived. Hearing the full story, I felt nothing but disgust. Gripping my suitcase, I turned to leave, but before I could take another step, Ethan grabbed my wrist. "Maddie, please listen to me," he pleaded. "This man just never gives up, does he?" I took a deep breath and looked at Ethan Carter with complete indifference. "Ethan, I thought I made myself very clear yesterday." He searched my eyes desperately, trying to find even the smallest trace of lingering affection, but he was disappointed. All he saw was the apathy one has for a stranger. Because I no longer cared, I wasn't angry, and because I wasn't angry, none of it mattered anymore. At last he realized that I truly didn't care about him anymore. His grip on my wrist loosened, and his voice was muffled as he muttered behind me, "I'm sorry." "Sorry for what? For this life or the last?" I left Yuanshan village and returned to Beijing. Seeing my parents alive and well, happy and healthy, was the final weight lifted off my chest. For days I had kept up an air of light-heartedness, but deep inside, I had carried a crushing burden because this had been my life. A suffocating, heavy existence that I could never escape. Truly let go of so easily. Ethan Carter and Sophia White deserved 1,000 punishments for what they did, but I had parents, I had my brother and his family. I couldn't waste my second chance at life just to ruin two worthless people. It was only at this moment, seeing my parents unburdened, untouched by the weight I had carried in my past life, that I finally felt a sense of relief. For the next few days I lived in warmth, in the simplicity of a family that loved each other. Then I threw myself fully into my career. With no son to hold me back, no in-laws draining me, I excelled. Before long I was promoted, I received a raise, and I was even offered a position as a university professor, fulfilling my long-lost dream of becoming an educator. I heard about Ethan Carter again a year later. Sophia White had finally gotten what she wished for in our past life. She married him. Not long after, Ethan took her back to Beijing, but his parents were never easy people to deal with in my past life. Even though I came from a good family and had a stable job, they still looked down on me. So naturally, they had even more contempt for Sophia, who had no job at all. They used every trick in the book to torment her. The Carter household was a constant battlefield. Ethan tried to take Sophia away, but his parents refused. They threatened and caused a scene, claiming that since Sophia had no job, she had married their son above her station. They still held a grudge against her, believing she had ruined their perfect daughter-in-law, me. So no matter what, they refused to let Ethan take her away. They wanted to keep her there to work as their servant, to wait on them hand and foot. But first love could never compete with reality. Romance in moonlit gardens couldn't survive daily life filled with house chores and nagging in-laws. With time, Ethan began to see Sophia differently. Without the glow of his affection, she was no different from a common sharp-tongued woman. Eventually, he requested a transfer to another city. This time, he didn't take Sophia with him. I later heard that Sophia fought back. She and Ethan's parents tore each other apart, and none of them lived well. Later still, I heard something even more unexpected. Ethan had cheated on her. In a fit of rage, Sophia stormed into his workplace and accused him of assaulting her while he was drunk in Yuanhan village. That part one hadn't seen coming. Then again, anyone willing to spend their life being a mistress to a scumbag probably wasn't an innocent victim either. What surprised me most was that in my past life, Ethan had resented me all because of one regret. Sophia whispered on her deathbed. I still remembered him standing there, looking at her photo, overcome with grief and heartbreak. Yet in this life, I saw no sign that he had ever been that devoted to her. I had overestimated him. A rotten person to his core, Ethan Carter only ever loved himself. How could he possibly have ever known what true regret was? All he felt was resentment over what he lost and bitterness over what he never had. But none of that mattered because in this life I had escaped that prison. Ahead of me, the road was wide open, bathed in sunlight.